Oh, glory to Jesus Christ, and welcome to St. Cyril Methodius Orthodox Church. I'm Father Gregory, the pastor, and it's good to be with you this morning. What is it? It is Sunday, November 6th, and I hope you remember to set your clocks back an hour last night. Don't want to show up early for church. Got to get there on time. Anyway, all right, snarky comment about daylight savings time. Well, I want to talk to you this morning about accountability and responsibility because these are very different things. Now, when I was a young man and involved somewhat with the Catholic Charismatic Renewal, though it never really was to my taste, there was this strong emphasis in headship on having someone in the community to whom I would be responsible. That's also a notion that's very common among Protestant Christians, this idea of accountability to someone, whether it's a small group or the pastor. In Orthodoxy, it takes the form of being obedient to our spiritual father. Well, let me say right off the bat that none of this is compatible with the gospel. Jesus Christ calls us not to be accountable to a third party, but responsible for our actions, for the things that we do. Think about this for just a minute. In the prayer before Holy Communion, what do we ask? We ask that God forgive us our sins, known and unknown, committed by thought, word, or deed, voluntary or involuntary. We stand before Christ as we get ready to receive his precious body and blood in the Eucharist, and we acknowledge our sinfulness, and not just our sinfulness, but our culpability for our sins, whether they're known or unknown, whether they're committed voluntarily or involuntarily. What Jesus Christ calls us to is responsibility, and that is freedom. Freedom to accept the consequences of our actions. This idea of accountability, of shifting responsibilities to a third party, really is a great misunderstanding of, at least among Orthodox Christians, of monastic obedience. Obedience in the monastic tradition is not the submission or conformity of the will of the monk to the abbot or the spiritual father. It is rather a process by which the spiritual father helps the monk learn to be responsible for his own actions and decisions. There is an immense amount of harm that's done when we confuse responsibility with accountability. At a minimum, it tends to constrict the freedom and the creativity of the individual. More dramatically, it sets up the opportunity for abuse, for really the parish to become sectarian and even cultish. It's just fundamentally a bad thing. To be responsible, however, means that I am an adult, that I accept the consequences of my actions, and as flowing from that, I also extend that willingness to others, to them to be responsible as well. I affirm the responsibility, the freedom of other people. So what about you? Are you accountable or responsible? Do you want to shift responsibility for your actions off to a third party, whether it's your pastor or your priest or the bishop or your spiritual father, or are you responsible? Are you willing to stand before Christ and say, this is the decision I made. These are the consequences of that decision. Some of them I intended, others catch me by surprise, but I accept responsibility for them. I accept the consequences of my actions. That latter path is the path of the spiritually mature. It's difficult, and sometimes it's even frightening. And yet there is no other way that we can live. Jesus Christ in the Gospel of St. John says, if the Son of Man has set you free, you are free indeed. Responsibility is the path of true freedom. Not that I don't make mistakes, not that I don't sin, but that I have the courage of my convictions and the maturity to accept the consequences of my decisions, All of this rooted in something which is even more fundamental, which is my experience of the grace and mercy of God. I can be responsible because I know that my God will forgive me, that he will heal me of my sins, and that he will help me to become more and more like him. Well, again, responsible or accountable, you make the choice. It is just 8 o'clock now. I've got to get ready for liturgy. So this morning, if you're here in Madison and you've seen this, maybe you can come and visit us at St. Cyril Methodius. Liturgy is at 9:30. If you're not in Madison, well, maybe there's an Orthodox church in your area that you can attend if you're not Orthodox. But if you are Orthodox, whether you're in Madison or someone else, please be at liturgy this morning. Be responsible for your own spiritual life. Don't shift responsibility for liturgy by making these sort of, frankly, vain excuses. All right. So God bless everyone, and I'll see you at church in just a little bit. Bye-bye.